Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us again for another episode of Bridging Leadership Gaps. My name is Florian, and I'm so delighted to be with you today, together with my teaching partner, Alena Ipanova. Welcome, Alena.
Hi, Florin. Thank you so much. It's actually our first live this year, right?
It is, yeah. It's been a while, so I think we have a lot of things that we could share with our audience, but probably the topic why people are tuning in today is to hear about the leadership, the self-leadership gap, and to also understand a bit about how pressure actually changes our behavior. So I'm excited about the topic, but then we can of course wave in any updates, any things we're happy to share with the audience.
Yes, and I would also encourage others who are listening. You can type in the chat any questions that you have. We might also check it either during our live or we might get back to it in the end, right? So it's good to hear your stories or questions and to know exactly how to make this conversation more relevant because we can navigate in the process, right? We are flexible.
Absolutely, yeah. So tell me, what comes to mind when you think about how pressure changes someone's behavior?
Good question. I wrote a post about it yesterday, and there were many interesting comments. And then I found this quote that is very powerful. When you squeeze an orange, the orange juice comes out, and when someone squeezes you, what comes out? So pressure is quite an interesting topic, I think, to examine and to self-reflect and to do some deep work as well. Not just like, oh, okay, I'm not behaving myself or I'm not being myself, I have too much on my plate, but actually what's in your power? What can you do to choose how you want to respond, even in a very tough situation, in a very difficult situation, rather than go into your defaults. And defaults might be not necessarily something that serve us well in the situation. So really love this quote. What about you? Like what associations you have with pressure, how it shows up for your leadership clients as well?
Yeah, that's a great question because the juice is actually it's our best, right? So what's best out of an orange? It's the orange juice, right? But when we are squeezed, we might not get out our best. And I think that's so for me, this self-leadership gap is the gap between how you would like to show up or how you would like to act under pressure and actually how you show up. And this is also in sports. There is a code that I like about sports and high performers. It says that you don't raise to the level of your hopes, not even to the level of your maybe training. You're actually fall down to the level of what you can manage in that moment, because you could train very, very well, but then in the heat of the moment, if you're stressed out, you're not going to be able to bring your act together. That's why when we rehearse something, it sounds like it flows well, but then when you're in front of the audience and something happens unexpected, you're now under pressure. The slides do not work, the mic doesn't work, things do not work. So then that's when you forget about your rehearsal, forget about your training, and you kind of just react to the situation. So it's that space actually. Quote that I really love. It's from Dr. Viktor Frankl, who was a prisoner in the concentration camps in Austria, I believe, during World War II. He was actually writing this book, Man's Search for Meaning, in the prison, and he said that between stimuli and response there's a space, and in that space we have the choice, and in the choice lies our growth and our freedom. Now, this was a guy that was beaten up by the Nazi and in the camp, but he even in that situation, he found out that what was common to all the people that survived that experience was that they had this space. They didn't react to what was done to them. And I think that's more or less like when things are going to go wrong, and they were going to go wrong. I don't say if, but when things are going to go wrong, uh, are you reacting to it, or are you pausing and thinking about what should you be doing right now and allow for that, you know, growth and freedom space? That's how I look at it.
It's very powerful. We also use it in communication, and I use it in the cultural intelligence training as well. So the I think the challenge here, and I would like us actually to unpack it, that on the level of knowledge and understanding, we all agree with that. Okay, we have a choice, and there might be just milliseconds between we react, because we also engage our emotional brain, right? So we react faster on the tone of voice or our assumptions or interpretations. And then sometimes it just feels it happens so fast that I didn't have time to actually stop myself in the moment and allow myself the space to choose what's the best response here. So what would you suggest can we do with this? How can we actually catch ourselves in the moment, stop, pause, and decide how we want to respond instead of reacting? Because this is the very common challenge.
Yeah, absolutely. So I don't know if I have the absolute answer, but one way that I have found very useful is to I had a question from someone just recently. I was leading a workshop on negotiation, and someone said, all your principle makes a lot of sense. How do I make sure that I use them when I'm in the heat of the moment? And I said, well, let me give an example for when I knew that I'm actually speaking too much. So what I've done, I put a little L for listening on the top right corner of my notebook. Hopefully, during that conversation, I may look in my notes and at my notes and in my notebook, I may see that any kind of reminder, any kind of, like, sometimes I don't know if you done, but sometimes we put a little mark on the finger here with a pen, just for me when I'm looking at my hands. I remember, okay, so there is something, there is a we didn't have reminders when I was young, and we were actually putting an X here in my palm. So I remember when I look at, so I don't have to, so I need to remember that. So a bracelet, something that pinches you, or something that you cannot just ignore, something that you it can stop you from reacting in the moment. So anything like that could help you remind yourself that, okay, default, I will just probably react, but because I have this here to remind myself that I should not react. So that's a way that you could actually remind yourself that you should not react. But then I think part of what I share about the sports athlete, it's that also you more or less, when you're in the heat of the moment, you default back to, or you fall back to the level of a training. So basically you can have this little reminder and remind yourself, oh, I should not react to this, but what else do I do? What else do I say? So with everything you do in the cultural intelligence training, I believe trains them to know what to do or what to say when they are now aware that there is a space, right? So the sign or the reminder helps them stop, but then they should be falling back to something that is different and is better, and it may be serving them better. So that's where I'm curious to understand, what are you training people when you train on cultural intelligence, like what would be some strategies now? Okay, I was gonna to react, I was able to stop. Now what should I have in mind when I'm now responding rather than reacting?
I think this is a brilliant question, and there are different ways to answer it as well. So I'll speak a little bit about culture. That culture actually influences the way we show up, the way we communicate, the way, like, what we consider normal, accepted, or respectful or disrespectful. And because now we work in multicultural environment, and I don't speak about cultures as just nationalities. It's everything. It's generations, it's our experiences, professional experiences, religion, politics, everything that makes us who we are. So we have those different defaults. And sometimes we might misinterpret each other's behavior, because in my culture, direct feedback, for example, might be respectful. And this is how you are supposed to have to surface all the difficulties and challenges. But in someone else's culture, it might be a sign of disrespect. So how we are driven by the same value, respect. But what it implies in one culture and in another culture might be totally different. So we need to have this awareness and sensitivity. What is going on in our brain when something happens? We have certain triggers, right? And they might be culture dependent, and they activated in the moment, and then we make assumption what it actually means. We interpret. So we tell ourselves a certain story. Something happened and it's just a neutral situation, right? So we assign the meaning. And which meaning we assign might be driven by what we are used to, what is normal around us, whether it's our country culture or organizational culture. So here we need to be aware that what we assume might not be true. So we need to ask ourselves what else can be true. And this is something that helps you ask questions and be more curious and be more open instead of reacting. So this is actually what you can do in the moment. And there is one really good exercise that I'm testing with my clients, and it's fun and it's working miracle. I was inspired to do it by, I took part in Game Changer program by ICQ Global, Csaba Toth, and he shared the derailers assessment that we were doing. And what we were doing, we were creating avatars for our triggers. So you need to know your triggers, first of all. What triggers you? Because if you don't know, it's just this feeling, it's a little bit messy, you can't really explain it, you just feel this way. But when you know your triggers, when you can name them, and then when you can create an avatar, I'll share my example. So I have this, we lean to our defaults, right? So one of my defaults is controller. So this is one of my derailers. And I also had to look at it as, oh, this is something that, this is not an enemy. This is something that tries to protect me from something, right? So I needed to develop better understanding of myself. So here we talk about self-leadership. And I made an avatar for my derailer. So it became the devil wears Prada. So there was this priestly lady, and exactly like she is the controller in my head. So whenever something happens and I feel that I start transitioning to that part, it's like, okay, Miranda Priestley, you had to stop here. So just being able to name it, being able to understand it, it's already a huge path to success. And this is how you train it. And then when you also understand how culture might influence how you react to things, this is also something that helps you navigate better, and eventually it helps you to decode and interpret behaviors of others much better. So that would be a long example from my experience.
Wow. That's so good. Naming your triggers and your fears, yeah, and the railers. It reminds me of a couple of things here. So what I will, while you were talking, a couple of things come to mind. So what I can relate to from what you just shared right now, in the last part here with the triggers. When I work with leaders and we do our Maxwell communication impact assessment, this is based on the DISC methodology, but we're not just happy with one color, one letter, or one style. We're looking into much deeper into their 3 different situations. So we have, how do you act when you put on a mask? We call this the public self. So meaning that you have to make a first impression, and now that's where this is how I should be showing up. So more or less, you kind of step into the character of who you think you should be, and that works well, because you try to make a first impression. But if the person asks you something that you didn't plan for, that it was unexpected, something unexpected happened, then you default back to, as you say, your default behavior. We call that the core behavior. This is your core values. So no matter how I want to show up, what I want to achieve, if you push me or if you challenge me, I'm going to go back to my core values. And this happens in a split of a second. And there is kind of a third part where we say this is the self-image, the more or less the way you see yourself. When you're comfortable, you are at your best. That's how you describe yourself. So one is the private self. That is you with your, when you're comfortable. The other one is pressure, and the other one is public. You want to make a first impression. So we have found that actually the gap, the self-leadership gap, it's the gap between how you want to show up and how you show up when someone pressures you. And we have found that, so ideally these 3 graphs should be these 3 intensity of these each of the styles. So we look at the 4 styles of the DISC as being the genes in the DNA. You all have the genes, but some are dominant and some are not. So when we see people struggling with maintaining their stance and not being triggered, is when we see differences between how they want to show up and actually their values. And also, if the self-image, it's different than their core values, then we also say, okay, not only you try to be someone else, then you're not, and that takes a lot of energy. And when someone pressures you, then you snap. But also, if we see the difference between the core and the self-image, is that they are not aware about the triggers. So the exercise you were doing, you're becoming aware of the triggers, and you are naming your triggers. So that way, it bridges the way you see yourself to the way actually you would react under pressure. And each of these 4 styles in our methodology have a fear. And I think the triggers, like what you're saying, a trigger is taking back control. That may be, at least in our methodology, a sign of a fear of losing control. So the fear of losing control acts as you taking back control. And I see this with leaders. So if one of when people and leaders go into micromanagement, it's because of that. So they feel they lose control over the outcome. So now they cannot trust the team anymore, and they go into micromanagement. So this is how we look at it. And each of these styles in our methodology have a fear. The more driven ones would be always looking for what could go wrong. They are afraid of being taken advantage of. The more like communicative and in the kind of the informal ones or impromptu, they are afraid of being rejected. And I found myself trying to add kind of bonuses to a deal. I didn't want to be rejected. I didn't want the person to say no to working with me. So I went out of my way to try to please them so they would work with me, because that was my fear of rejection. And instead of me moving on and take the next person, because it's much easier to talk to someone that is willing and open-minded to work with you than to try to convince someone that is not. But I didn't see that. So those were kind of some of my triggers that were actually showing up. And this usually comes from one of the fears, which is, because if we think about triggers, right, and pressure, and what this does, physiology. And my wife is a psychiatrist, so she talks about the amygdala, right, and that it's our flight or fight response. And we look at leaders, for example, when they are afraid of losing control, what do? Either they become stubborn or they take back control, or they just become unresponsive. So they just pull back and not engage anymore. So that's, I think the triggers are coming because of these underlying fears that we all have. And if we don't know them, if we cannot name them, if we cannot put the name on that trigger, then it's just happening automatically. And I coach leaders and say, I know you told me to say that, but I just couldn't. I said whatever it came because you really pissed me off. I said, okay, we have a little bit more work to do.
Yeah. I'm thinking now, Florin, like just to leave people who are listening to us with something practical, like from what you share, if I may to kind of sum it up, because I like the model that you shared here. And I was thinking about humans as systems. So we are as a system, we are not a specific type or like personality type defined by the assessment. So we are a system. And here triggers are the part of our understanding how our system functions, which part of our system goes or drives the car, and which part of our system takes the back seat. So maybe we need to switch them, right, for the situation to unfold with better outcomes. So understanding that, and then the reflection on the past situations could be helpful, because I was thinking about it, and actually in my leadership practice, whenever I try to bring it up with my clients, I feel resistance. When I ask them, okay, let's do 90 seconds pressure audit. I recall back a recent situation when you felt you're pressured, you're squeezed. So what was the story you were telling yourself? So what were the assumptions? And they're not super willing to examine that because they behaved in a certain way and they might also feel guilty. But this is the way to actually explore and break it down to the patterns where you can identify triggers, something that you just shared. Like when we reflect back, we analyze the story we told ourselves, our actions, and we name our fears and maybe also our desires, what we actually wanted in reality. And then we rewrite it, how you could actually behave. So could it be as a part of a training in your experience as well, if we do this reflection exercise?
Absolutely, I think it's a great exercise, and it kind of resonates or reminds me of a model that I just took out for just to sharing here. So it's called the ABCDE model from Albert Ellis, and why is this important? Because we think that what happened, it's the direct cause for our behavior. So let's say someone makes a comment about the presentation we just hosted, and then we think that the person's comment made us feel in a certain way. And this will be, so A is the activating element, and C was the consequence, right? But he says, no, you don't go, there is a B in between, and that is the belief. So it's not what the person did, it's what I believe about what I did that makes me act in a certain way. And that's what you're sharing. Like when you're looking at it, did they really want to kind of pull me down or criticize me, or they were just curious, or maybe I was unclear in my presentation? So when you look at it and you put it down and say, okay, well, what happened is this, okay? So what are the facts? What happened is someone made a comment, okay? So what is the meaning that I actually assigned to it? That's kind of the belief. I believe that they made a comment because of whatever, okay? So then what was the consequence? How did you act because of that? Well, what I've done is that I dismissed them, or I got defensive, or whatever I've done, or I criticized them. And then the D and E would be like debating. Now, okay, looking at it, what did I do and what did I believe? Is that true? Can I really have the data? Meaning, is it true? And it doesn't even matter if it's true. Does it help me? Meaning, did it help me to get a better outcome of the situation or not? and then E would be, okay, now you can explore how would you have done this differently. So I found that when you put this model and you put, like, you just create a table with different columns and you put, what happened, what do you believe about it, what was the consequence of that, debating now, let's look at it, and then looking at other ways to do it, it kind of, as you say, takes that experience out of our mind and put it on paper, and then you can work with it, and you can look at it, and you can look at the beliefs that triggered you, or what made you really do that, because it's not what the person did, it's what you believe about that.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. And I would like add culture lens to it, definitely, to also, because we are so complex, and the way we behave, we might experience internal pressure from the stories that we tell ourselves, from the belief part. And then also we try to comply to certain expectations that we have, whether it's hierarchical structure or who takes decisions, autonomy, things like this. So we are playing this game on multiple levels. So being in connection with yourself, actually the basic part, we need to go back to basics. And we need to be willing to dig deeper than just, saying, okay, I overreacted, or that was a mistake or something. We need to make sure that next time this similar situation happens, we respond in a better way.
Yeah, absolutely. I think a story that I would like to share, this is very personal to me. When our son was 1 year old, I was just sitting on my desk here, and he was playing in the hallway, and he came into my room and picked up this remote control. And I just said, oh yeah, just put it back. And I just went on my work, and he opened it, took out the batteries, and then he was playing with it. I didn't even notice that because I would have stopped him immediately. And my wife was in the kitchen doing something, and just moments later I heard choking noise. He was rush. One battery was missing. And I assumed that he swallowed it. Now it's like AAA battery, it's not like the small battery. And he was probably surprised of my reaction, and we just had to rush into the hospital. We call 911, we go into the hospital. They say where we were living there in north of Denmark, oh, there is nothing we can do here. You have to go to the nearest hospital. We're about 40 kilometers away. If something happens, stop, pull on the right side and call the ambulance. They're going to meet you on the way. If he's still okay breathing, then just go there. So we went there. They scanned him. They said, are you sure it's this battery? So yeah, that's the battery. Okay, so it seems there is something there. We can send you to another hospital. They will have to get in with a tube to actually fetch it, and so it doesn't go through the system. So we went to the other hospital. They put him to sleep. They went in and they didn't find it. And they said, well, it's probably because the time that took between, when he swallowed it and now, maybe it passed already the stomach. So now it's not dangerous anymore because the next part of the, digestive system is not as acid as the stomach, because the risk is that the acid in the stomach kind of breaks it down, and then the acid in the battery leaks in the stomach. And that's really, really, really dangerous. So then they just dismissed us home, and we had to just monitor, that the battery is getting out, from the system. And we were like, 2-3 days later, I mean, it's impossible, because I know, how long it should be in the system, and it should be out by now. And I just said, I think it's probably not in the system. Let's search the house again. So when we searched the house again, we found the battery was under one shoe in the hallway. So we went through all that, because in the heat of the moment, we made the worst case assumption, and we couldn't see clearly. We couldn't search. And I searched that part of the house. I searched it. And imagine 3 days later, we were still waiting for the battery to come out, and it was not there. And we put our son through, anesthesia and intubation for nothing, because we could not think clearly in the moment. So I'm wondering, Now, in what areas of your leadership of your life you rush to the hospital before you have searched the house?
Oh, this is a heartbreaking story, Lauren, because I have 3 kids, I'm just like, but then I think there is also difference in the fear. There's the fear of death or fear of the fear for your life. It's one thing. And when it's like the mental level, the stories that we tell ourselves can be different. So our reactions might be different here. And possibly you can't train, and possibly you shouldn't train for this one, because if it's a fear of life, you have to act. You have to, it can be, there is a good talk, I think Simon Sinek did it, on the differences in fear. But yeah, it's a good example, but I totally understand your actions as a parent.
But the point is that you don't see clearly. Like when I get tired and
Yeah.
I don't sleep enough, for a few days, I cannot read small text on my phone anymore. And so if I am tired and I cannot read and focus on small text on my phone, can I read the room? Can I read what happens in the room?
Yeah.
And that's what we're saying, is that basically pressure just kind of closes our creativity and our logical mind, and we more or less just default on survive, right? This is At that moment I was fighting for his life, and we were fighting for his life, and we didn't know what the outcome would be. Not for 1 second we thought that maybe we would be wrong. And that's the problem. When you're in the moment, you trigger, you think you're right, and that's why you end up in maybe reacting to pressure rather than considering. So I think this was valuable for our viewers. I hope it was. It's definitely more to unpack. I'll love for us to go longer, but I know we have a hard stop, both you and I. So perhaps just think about, for me, when I experience fear and pressure, I'm thinking about, okay, why is this happening? So number one could be that if there's something unexpected. So I maybe plan for some things, I put on my best game, but they did something, or something happened that I didn't expect it. And that's so something unexpected happens. Maybe I was not prepared for the situation. So when I feel that I'm unprepared, I feel more stressed. If I feel more stressed, I play even worse. If I can calm down, then I am playing at least the game that I have, what I trained for. For example, if someone is hiding something or is dishonest, that also adds pressure. So when you're dishonest, then that will trigger you, because you're going to be under pressure, and we become defensive. Like when we have made a mistake, we don't admit it, then we kind of become defensive. Or maybe then the real kind of fear of survival that I actually shared that story with my son. But as you say, outside of these situations where you really have to act, the other 3 or 4 are actually not life-threatening. So those are actually the situation where we suggest you should be looking at and understanding, why am I feeling under pressure or stressed out? Is it because something unexpected happened? Because I'm not prepared? Because I'm not honest with, the length of work I put in, or this is maybe I steal someone else's idea and I pretend it's mine, and all these things that are, part of our life and our career, outside of the fear of survival and the fear of losing someone. So I don't know, what are your thoughts?
I would add a power statement here, because I also want to empower people who are listening to us, that pressure shows you some of the reality, right? So, and it shows you the potential where you can get better. So if you start looking at it from this point of view, because I've been there myself, I felt guilty like multiple times. I see it at my clients as well. They feel like, how could I behave this way? It was not me. I don't recognize myself. And we all can relate to that. But then instead of feeling guilty about it, we can actually move it forward a little bit and give it the direction. Okay, I just haven't trained properly in this part. Now I know. So good that I know this is my trigger. I'm going to give it a name. I'm going to do deep work. So next time I show up differently. So you kind of rebuild your autopilot so that your autopilot actually starts serving you well, and see it more as an opportunity to develop. I always have this joke with my friends when I read reviews, because we travel a lot, we live in different places, and I read reviews for restaurants or for places to stay. And I like checking bad reviews and the responses that the owners are giving. It can tell a lot, right? Because the review might trigger some feelings as well. So treat it this way, as if you are an owner of a restaurant and someone complains. So how are you going to handle this situation? So the power statement from me, so see it as an opportunity and just work on it, be willing to work on it. So I really enjoyed our conversation today, Florian, and the stories you share, I always appreciate them.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, and so yeah, if just everything starts with awareness. Just if you are able to just catch yourself in the moment, if not, at least look back at it and become aware of all the things we just shared. You know, your fears, your triggers. Unless you look at that and you analyze it and you put it on paper, you do the exercise that Elena is suggesting. You name it, you work with it. It humanizes you, and then it separates it from you. Because my closing statement here is one of the most useful, I think, views of life is to separate the person from the behavior. You are not your behavior. If you're triggered, you are not your trigger. If someone done something, they're not the action. So when you separate the behavior, what happened, what did you do from you, then you can analyze the behavior. If not, and say, I am stupid. I don't know how to act under pressure. Oh, why did I say that? I am so stupid. Now all of a sudden you are something, rather than, well, that was a stupid response, but I'm not stupid.
Yeah, I love this reframing as well.
Thank you
so
so
lots
much.
of golden nuggets here, and I hope we created value.
I think we have to go back through this lesson. I'm doing that. I'm working on a book and I'm reviewing my old content. I think I have a lot of gold that I shared and you have shared on these shows. I think I probably have to go back and listen to them and actually pick the nuggets we share, because it sounds like it was really valuable. So yeah, I'll do that. Probably I'm going to have to go through some of our previous shows.
Yeah. Thank you so much for today, Florian.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for tuning in. We look forward to engage with you. If you have any comments or questions, just drop them in down below this video, and we're gonna be happy to go through them. All right. Take care, everyone. Have a great Thursday. Take care. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.